Hey guys, SuperHorrorBro Mike here, and in today's Bendy and the Ink Machine video, we take a look at the mysterious footprints found in Chapter 1 that lead from the Ink Machine to the break room, which is strangely locked upon Henry's return. Who do these footprints belong to, and why? In this video, we investigate these questions as I present you with 3 theories that may explain all. But before we take a look at who these footprints belong to, let us quickly analyze them in order to narrow down the selection. The most obvious detail here is that they appear to be human feet, 5 toes on each foot, and matching the basic shape of a normal person's feet. They also look fairly big and so most likely belong to a male character. The spacing of these footprints also alludes to the idea the person in question was in a rush, which makes sense considering Henry would be returning and the ink demon soon to be birthed from the machine itself. Also of note is a big pool of ink right below the boards, as well as around the locked door to the break room. So now we have the basic information, we can begin forming some opinions as to who these footprints belong to. I would like to rule out 3 characters right off the bat. These are Susie Campbell, Alison Pendle, and Thomas Connor. Susie Campbell we now assume was Evil Alice. Her feet would have been too small to form these footprints, and she doesn't have the motivation to want to board up the ink machine. She is known to get others to do her handiwork, as seen in Bendy Chapter 3, where she uses Henry as an errand boy.
Return to the lift, my little errand boy. We have work to do.
Also, she was surprised to see Henry, and so wouldn't have known of his reappearance at the studio. And finally, Susie is found all the way down in the Heavenly Toys workshop, where, judging by all the dead Boris clones, it appears she has been for quite some time. Thomas Connor and Alison Pendle we assume are Good Alice and mechanically armed Boris, who show up during the finale of Chapter 4. With the way they approach Henry and save him from Evil Alice, it seems unlikely they would have sat back and allowed him to activate the ritual process, unleashing all manner of hell upon the studio if they had a way to communicate with him. No, whoever did this wanted to remain hidden and secretive. With this in mind, I believe we have 3 possible candidates. These are Sammy Lawrence, Joey Drew, and Wally Franks. I'm going to try and explain the motives behind each of these characters and why they would have wished not only to remain hidden from Henry during this point in the story, but also why they would want to board up the ink machine room and keep the ink demon at bay. So let's get started with a look at Sammy Lawrence. Sammy Lawrence was the music director at Joey Drew Studios, in charge of the music department and songs created for the Bendy cartoons within it. Since the ritual, he has been a little unhinged, to say the least, obsessing over the ink demon, who he believed would set him free if he used other workers at the studio as sacrificial offerings.
Love requires sacrifice.
Unfortunately for Sammy, this didn't quite work out for him, but Sammy did gain some powers, it seems, from his inky new body. While exploring the workshop in Bendy Chapter 1, Henry comes across a Bendy cutout that appears out of nowhere.
Who put this here?
And later, a second cutout that pops out from behind the entrance to the projector room. It's eerie because we never really encounter the person who put them there. Or do we? You see, in Chapter 2 we see Sammy pass by a doorway in front of Henry carrying a Bendy cutout, suggesting he has been the one placing them around. And sure enough, as we turn the corner, Sammy has disappeared.
Where the hell did he go?
However, beside the Bendy cutout is a large pool of ink leading inside a hole in the wall, implying Sammy has the ability to move through the ink, much like Demon Bendy himself. Now jumping back to Chapter 1, we see a pool of ink leading inside the wall here in the projector room the Bendy cutout popped out from. So it certainly seems Sammy was leading Henry around in Chapter 1, like a shepherd leading his sheep to slaughter.
We wouldn't want our sheep roaming away now, would we?
This would mean Sammy's motives were to keep Henry alive and on the right track until he fell into his trap within the music department where he had prepared the ritual process, then becoming part of his sacrifice and hopefully setting Sammy free. Meaning Sammy has been tracking Henry since he first reactivated the ink machine and drew his attention, watching from inside the walls. We can see evidence of Sammy's constant presence here when listening to this audio log in Chapter 2.
Can I get an amen?
I said, can I get an amen?
However, while this theory seems sound enough, it doesn't completely make sense. Why did Sammy only leave footprints here and nowhere else at any point in the game? Well, if we take a closer look at Sammy's character model, we can actually see he is wearing boots. This would mean he wouldn't leave footprints, and so while the evidence is there to support Sammy being the one responsible for the boarded up machine room, it kind of falls apart with this one detail. With this in mind, let's move on to our second suspect, Joey Drew. If you're a regular viewer of my Bendy theories, you'll know that I'm a firm believer of Joey Drew in fact being the ink demon himself. I won't re-explain this theory in this video, but if you're interested to know why I feel Joey is Bendy, then I'll leave a link at the end of this video. However, we must remember that these are all theories, and no one knows exactly where the story of the game is headed other than its developers, the Meatly Games. So we do have to entertain the notion that Joey Drew may not be Bendy. If this is the case, he may well be the person responsible for boarding up this door and these mysterious footprints, and here's why. We get the feeling Joey Drew became a pretty terrible person. Just going by his audio logs, we know at the very least he was duping his workers into believing fake propaganda about their dreams coming true by working hard at his studio.
With true inner strength, you can conquer even your biggest challenges. You just have to believe in yourself and remain honest, motivated, and above all, who you really are. Okay, let's stop right there.
Dreams come true, Susie. Dreams come true.
And we know he didn't exactly treat his workers particularly well. He definitely became a corrupt personality. We also see his book, The Illusion of Living, and Wally Frank's comments which mention Joey was trying to appease the gods, as well as a creepy ritual process and pentagram-like designs found around the studio. This suggests that Joey was into the occult, potentially demonic summonings. This means that if Bendy is not Joey Drew, then he is instead an evil entity born out of a ritual process designed by Joey from his research into the supernatural. So why would Joey Drew be summoning such a creature? Well, my best guess would be that Joey wants to capture Bendy and somehow harness his evil powers. What better way to do this than to use his old work partner to not only activate the ritual, but also lure the ink demon down into the heart of the studio, where Joey could lay in wait with a trap ready to capture him, completing the ritual and allowing Joey to access the ultimate evil power of Bendy. So then this would be the reason why Joey boarded up the ink machine. But why the inky footprints leading to this locked door then? Well, we have to remember that Henry used Joey's own key item in the ritual process itself.
Okay, that's all of them.
And we assume this process turned other workers into inky humanoid figures known as the Lost Ones, as well as turning the handyman of the studio into Boris clones. Again, I've covered this before, so I'll link you guys one of these videos at the end of this one. With this concept in mind, it seems logical to conclude that if Joey isn't Bendy, his body would have instead become altered into some kind of inky manifestation, explaining the pool of ink building up around the 2 points where Joey would have been standing still. also explaining why there are footprints leading only back and not to the machine room. Joey's transformation began after Henry flipped the lever, while he was standing outside the machine room putting up the boards. But why did Joey go into the break room and lock the door if this is the case? Well, inside the break room we find this boarded up stairwell. At the back of the corridor, we can clearly see a trapdoor leading down. This stairway may lead directly down to the bottom of the studio where Joey's lair is to be found in Bendy Chapter 5. Also in this room we find Joey Drew's book, The Illusion of Living. Is this a coincidence? Or further evidence that these footprints may in fact belong to Joey after all? I'll let you decide as we jump into our third and final theory, that Wally Franks may be the person behind these footprints. The one thing we know about Wally Franks is that he is fairly cowardly. I mean, just listen to his catchphrase.
I'm out of here.
So it seems that Wally, if he didn't escape the studio, would have been hiding safely somewhere inside. Perhaps somewhere like this trapdoor behind all these wooden boards. However, upon Henry's reappearance at the studio and activation of the ritual process, poor Wally may have plucked up the courage to come out of hiding to quickly board up the machine room door to try and keep whatever came out of it shut away. Much of this theory does make sense. Wally Franks was a handyman at the studio, putting up boards to block certain rooms such as the toilet seen here and cracks in the walls as seen here. He would have likely had access to an axe, as we find one right here on the maintenance team workbench, so cutting through these boards in front of a trapdoor would have taken mere seconds. He then would have been able to run up the stairs to the machine room door. Henry then activates the ink machine, turning Wally's body into ink as he works, hence the pool of ink below them. Wally then runs back, locks the door, and returns to hiding, where he may have finally transformed into another Boris clone like the other members of the Gent Maintenance Company. If this theory is correct, of course. This may explain why we encounter the Boris clone in Chapter 2. It may very well be Wally coming out of hiding to try and help Henry out. Or, if the Boris theory is incorrect, then it seems likely Wally would have ended up as yet another lost one. Either way, with the evidence at hand, I do believe Wally Franks makes the most sense out of the three suspects analysed in this video. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And that's it for today's video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy watching, and maybe drop a comment too, as well as subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. This channel specialises in variety horror content, including creepypasta readings, horror gaming facts and theories, and general interest pop culture horror videos. So if you're interested in all things spooky, you'll find something to enjoy here at SuperHorrorBro. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.